Welcome to the Property Preservation Insider Show, where we talk about all things dealing with the property preservation business. Thanks for joining us. On today's show, we're going to do a deep dive into how to start your own property preservation business. Joining me today is our hosts, Brian and Mary. Brian, why don't you get us started off today?
Good morning, everyone, and happy Sunday. So, we have been talking a little bit about the preservation business, and now we're going to start with how do you start your own? What should you do? What shouldn't you do? What things do you need? What things should you be expecting inside of this industry? And how do you protect yourself? So, the first format that we're going to talk about is business structure. Business structure is very important. You just don't go out and start something and do something unless you have everything taken care of first, or you're going to end up with lots of trouble afterwards. Depending on what state you live in, you definitely want to contact local professionals that deal with your local state laws in regards to business operations. We are located in Pennsylvania. We are very well versed in Pennsylvania law, and also we have really good attorneys. So definitely want to take a moment to make sure you're properly set up legally, so that way 5 years from now, the state doesn't come down back on you. So the first thing you really need to do is contact your state and figure out how you need to file and get a limited liability company, commonly known as the LLC. Talk to your attorney, get it set up. There are many websites out there also. It's a few $100, but it gives you protection without dealing with a lot of corporate laws. Again, contact your local attorneys, contact your local CPAs, get your business set up properly. The other big thing you're going to need is obviously EIN. This is your employment identification number. This is free. This is from the IRS. This gives you a connection. Now, this is very important too, because you need to protect yourself. With filling out applications, filling out forms, as we will get later on into the show, dealing with companies that could be all overseas, offshore, you don't want to be handing out your social security number, your birth date, and all the other personal information that they're going to require. This is important. Very important, that this is why you have a business structure set up, to give you that kind of protection, to make sure that you're not going to be dealing with credit fraud or credit issues later on down the road because you gave your social security number out so they can 1099 you at the end of the year. So very critical stuff, very important stuff. And this is the base. This is your foundation to build off of. And remember, if you know anything about construction, if you do not have a great foundation, what you build on top is irrelevant.
So the next thing that you need, there are various different types of insurance that you are going to need for this industry. One of the biggest ones that you are going to need is general liability insurance and EOB, I believe is what it's called.
E&O, errors
E&O.
and omissions.
I apologize. Insurance. And unfortunately, at least not here in Pennsylvania, there is not many insurance companies that will insure property preservation just for the various different types of things that we do. Here in Pennsylvania, one of the biggest ones is Brunswick. They have Hanover as an underwriter. Because of what we do, insurance companies, I'm not really good with insurance, but insurance companies have different codes and stuff. And the codes that property preservation falls under, companies like Next, they will not cover property preservation. So make sure when you are looking for your insurance that you are looking for a company that is very well versed in property preservation and can give you the amount, because each company requires a certain amount, which is normally like $1 million and $5 million. Make sure they are very well versed in property preservation. You will also need auto insurance and workers' compensation. insurance. Now, next is a great one for workers' compensation insurance. Just not so much for the and the general liability.
One thing I wanted to point out too, depending on who you're working for, most of your regional companies will take a lower grade insurance because they do have the primary insurance. But working with a lot of your nationals, there's two companies that they have, and Brunswick is one of them. Brunswick we have dealt with forever. They're out of New Jersey. But they are highly specifically catered to that industry, Mary, as you said.
Very much
but
so.
Again, if you go to some of the nationals, they're going to require you to have this kind of bond. They're going to require you to have this kind of insurance. So, and it's also very expensive. It is several thousands of dollars per year to have this policy underwritten. We just went through it. Woohoo! But that's one thing. You can always. There's nothing wrong with insurance. We love insurance. Insurance is one of those things that covers your butt in the case of emergency.
They have insurance for everything.
Yes, and you don't want to expose your business to unforeseen liability because you got the cheapest $29.99 policy, and next thing you know, that policy is not covering a vacant home. It only deals with homeowners. So again, you need to make sure you protect yourself and do your research. Brunswick is one of two companies that all nationals require. From day one, that's the insurance that I've had. That's the insurance we have had for decades, for many, 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 many years. So again, be safe, be smart, because you also are dealing with a situation where you might go patch a roof, you might go do a small repair, and next thing you know, there was an issue, there was drama, and the repair failed. Next thing you know, you've got $5,000, $10,000 worth of damage that the larger companies and the banks are coming after you for. Again, make sure you do your homework. Make sure you do it right. And this is a very specific industry that we are in. So again, Brunswick out of New Jersey, best insurance company we got.
Yes, and that's why a lot of insurance companies don't cover property preservation, because we do such a vast and wide variety of things. Once you get into getting on roofs and cutting down larger trees and, maybe demoing a shed and that kind of stuff, most insurance companies don't cover that. That is definitely why you have to do your research and find someone who is pretty much for property preservation, because just general insurance companies don't cover that.
One other thing too I wanted to talk about, as you are developing your business, as you're coming up with these, you're going to encounter things that are above your pay grade, above your skill level. As Mary said, a large tree. We are not arborists. We do not do that. We hire these companies. We are not licensed plumbers. We are not licensed electricians. But we have the capabilities, obviously, to hire the professional. So when you are doing your work for these companies and you subcontract out a large tree removal, make sure that you get a COI, a certificate of insurance. Make sure the companies you are dealing with aren't exposing you to unsightly potential damage to your company because they're not carrying the right insurance, because they're not doing the right thing. They're being cheap. Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, if you go do work for a national, for a regional, for a bank, for a real estate agent, and you hire Bob the tree guy, and Bob, no offense to Bob, I don't know you if you're out there, but if Bob does a mistake and next thing you know the tree crashes down on the house, his insurance should be dealing with it because he was doing the work. But if you don't do your research to make sure he has the proper coverage, to make sure he even has coverage, your insurance is going to deal with it. And insurance companies hate paying stuff out, but they love suing you for that stuff. So again, be prepared, be set up, be organized, and know what you're getting into. You need to have properly vetted subcontractors working for you also with the proper insurance. So another big point there to realize, insurance is our friend. Insurance is there when we need it. we all hate making the payments until you have an issue and that thing saves you in the end. So always remember that. Don't be cheap on your insurance. You will pay for it in the long run if you do it that way.
Yes.
So,
And speaking of subcontractors, if you are growing your business and you do have subcontractors underneath you or that you are subbing your work out to, please make sure that you have your subcontractors add your company to their policy and send you a COI.
yes, very important. If you're not listed on there and you file a claim, it could take longer. There could be bogus issues that they have to deal with. And speaking of that, that's a very good point that we found out, unfortunately, the hard way. When you have employees, you're growing your company. Now, in most states, and again, check your local laws, check your state laws, if I'm a single owner operator, I do not need to have workman's compensation for myself.
Correct.
Now, if I hire people, I bring people on, of course, the state requires me to have a workman's compensation policy rider and also pay into that. One important thing is that if you are using subcontractors, regardless whether it's Bob's Tree Service or John's Electrical Service or even Home Depot, one important thing is that if you are paying these subcontractors and you do not get their COI for their workman's compensation insurance, your workman's compensation is going to charge you. Always remember that. Mm-hmm. Because if an employee of that other company or the owner operator of that other company comes in and hurts himself on your job site, they could literally sue your insurance company. So again, this is why, your workman's comp policy will require, if you're paying subs, they need to have workman's comp also. So be aware of that, because that can be anywhere between 10% to 15% of what you are paying Bob, what you're paying John, to do these services. Even though they are professional companies, even though you are paying them for a service, your insurance companies look at the liabilities and the risks involved. So just because it's Home Depot doesn't mean that skates you from responsibilities. Just because you hire Bob and he's got your basic general liability insurance, you got to go deeper sometimes to protect yourself. Because again, what happens if Bob falls through the floor in this abandoned home as he's doing an electrical inspection, and next thing you know, Bob's suing you because he got injured in your property that you're working on? So bear in mind those words also. So again, laying the great foundation for a company. Make sure you're legal. Again, another thing too, to jump in there, does your state require you to have a general contractor's license if you work in the fields? Here in Pennsylvania, you are required. If you charge money, you need to show the state, hi, I have insurance, I have a business, I'm set up, I'm organized, I'm legit, here you go, and they issue a license. And if you operate outside of that, you can get in serious trouble, you can get jail time, you can get fines. So again, proper foundation. Do you need, what kind of structure are you wanting to set up? Like I say, talk to your local professionals, figure out what is best for you. Is a C Corp, S Corp, LLC, what's good for you? Making sure, you get your EIN number registered with the state so that way you can protect yourself and your social security and your personal information when you're filling out these applications, dealing with these other companies that could be fly-by-night situations. You definitely don't want that information out there. Your insurance. If you're going to work in preservation, it is highly recommended. Go with your Brunswick insurance. There's another one out there. We've just never used them. Make sure, you get your subcontractors vetted. Make sure everything is situated and set up. Make sure your auto policy is covered. Because again, what happens if you're on site and, your car hits something or damages something on the property? Normally your auto insurance will take care of that. You want to make sure you have that commercial policy dealing with your vehicles and such. And then, of course, workman's compensation. Jumping on that too, there is a client that we have that has there's two companies that we have that require workman's compensation insurance, or you pay. So the one particular company charges us 9% of gross volume because our particular company does not have workman's compensation on that. There's another thing too that I want to talk about, because it talks about, we talked about protecting yourself for this situation. One thing that we do that we found that is advisable for our situation, once again, just because it's for us doesn't mean it's for you, but we actually have multiple companies set up. So we have companies that hold our national clients that we work with, the big three. So then we have a second company, which just basically takes care of and holds our employment. So our employees work for one company, yet our other company brings in all the work from the nationals. Each company requires different insurance or different types of things. So again, that works for us. So you find out what's best for you, because we do deal with a lot of subcontractors, and to pay out a lot on workman's comp is rough. So we actually have a whole other company set up for that, so that way we can kind of avoid some of those trip hazards. So things to think about. Once you get everything set up, you got your truck loaded, you got your signs made, you got your business cards made, you got your shirts and your hats, and you're feeling really good. What kind of tools do you need? What kind of things do you need to do the jobs? This is property maintenance. We do some construction. We do, lawn care, landscaping, snow removals. We do the basics to maintain the home. One of those things too, we do debris removal. We get a couple things situated with that. But what kind of basic tools do you need? You're going to be dealing with winterization. You're going to be dealing with trash outs. You're going to be dealing with lawn care. What kind of truck do you have? What kind of trailer do you have? Are you going to use a trailer? We personally are steering away from trailers. We actually have ramps that mount to our trucks, so we're able to get in and out of the bed of our truck with our lawn equipment, with heavy tools, et cetera, with building supplies. Makes our life a lot simpler. But then also we do have dump trailers and things like that for our larger trash outs and larger jobs. We got to haul stuff. So again, you need to kind of figure out what is best for you in your situation. Are you going to do a lot of trash outs? Are you going to primarily focus yourself? Are you already set up as a debris removal company? And, what else do you need to get into the property preservation to get in to unlock those bank jobs that are very plentiful, very plentiful. But, that's what you need. Because, again, you cannot go to a job site and not have the proper tools. You cannot go to do a winterization and not have the proper setup. And again, as we develop, as we move forward, we are going to have training modules. We're going to be talking more and more in depth about a winterization setup and about your lawn gear. We're going to be kind of emphasizing a lot on some of the stuff that we have and we utilize, and some of the stuff also that we created directly for this job. Another thing, your vehicles. Do not strap a push mower, weed whacker, and leaf blower to the top of your four-door sedan, or pack them in your minivan. I've seen it. I had one subcontractor. We are hiring. We needed an HVAC technician, an air conditioning guy, and he responded to our ads. And we talked about, what kind of equipment does he have, what kind of vehicle does he have, so on and so forth. He didn't have a vehicle. He didn't have a driver's license. We're like, well, how are you supposed to get to the work? Why take the bus? You take the bus. Well, how are you going to carry all your equipment and tools on the bus? Are you going to buy a couple extra seats on the bus? He said, man, I never thought about that. Yeah. So what he worked for an HVAC company. He did air conditioning units and ductwork and furnaces for another company. They fired him. And again, he had no money, no job, because he wasn't preparing for anything. And next thing you know, this is his avenue of trying to get some resources together by taking the bus. You got to have reliable transportation, because that's one thing too. You're going to put the miles. Do I recommend you go out and buy a $95,000 diesel Duramax dually? No. because you're going to cry when you go down that driveway and there's sticks and limbs and you just scratched up a $10,000 paint job. But on the same point too, if your truck's not moving because it's a 1968, 78 clunker, yeah, you're not going to be able to get to those jobs. You're not going to be able to get to that work. So again, make sure you've got
dependable.
Exactly. Same thing too. Make sure your tires are good. Make sure your service guy is taking care of your vehicle. We see it so many times that people do not realize how to make money in this industry because it's complicated. It really is. But once you get into it and once you become an asset for those companies that you're working for and you prove yourself, the work will flow.
Yes.
So one important thing is work orders. There is things in our industry that are not set in standardized home construction or home maintenance. There are a lot of requirements because we deal with government contracts, we deal with government entities, HUD, FHA. There's liability risks because you are literally breaking into a house. You are going through a house and, someone might have firearms there. Someone might have expensive jewelry there. Someone might have cars there. And again, this is all personal property. And again, these are some of the things that we talked about with insurance. These are some of those things that we talked about. It's a very specific industry, very specific industry. One of those things is work orders. This is not a position where you go put ads out, you go, hand out a bunch of business cards, stand on the street corner with your sign, buy TV ads. You don't need to because there is so much work available. It shows up. Trust me. But how do the nationals or regionals deliver you the work orders? There are primarily two different types of software out there that are mainstream. One of those is Property Preservation Wizard, and the other one is Proven. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think both of them are owned by the same company. I think
I'm pretty sure, yes.
Bought both of them, so it's funny how that works. But basically, with Property Preservation Wizard, all of our work that we do rely on photographs. Nobody from Chase Manhattan, nobody from Bank of America is going to show up in your local town and double check the winterization you did. We prove these items by photographs. And let me tell you this, I have lost a lot of money because of photographs. What do you mean? We were doing work for FHA for burn houses in Baltimore, Maryland. And we were doing replumbing work. So again, we hired a professional licensed contractor to come in and do our plumbing repairs. So the city came in, they inspected the work, they signed off on it, they were good to go. Every process, every step was followed, except my contractor did not take great photographs. So the plumber obviously didn't take photographs. I had people there. So the work was completed. Nobody took pictures. They put the insulation in, they put the drywall up, they painted the walls and everything else. And the bank comes back and we're like, hey, where's the photographs of this plumbing work? We don't see it. The stuff in the walls. Oh, oops. Yeah, it's there. Don't worry. You see the city inspector wrote off on it. He signed off that the work was good. The work was appropriate and according to code. And the bank was like, we don't care. We don't have our photographs. Oh. Well, it's there. Trust us. We hired a licensed. We don't care. Okay. Well, how do I, what's the next steps? Well, we need photographs. Well, we've already drywalled, insulated, and painted. We need photographs. But I have a licensed inspector that says it's good. We need photographs. I have a licensed professional plumber give me a receipt for everything he did. Yeah, we don't care. We need pictures. So that particular job ended up costing us close to $20,000 because we did not have pictures of plumbing set forth inside of the walls. So, and quite frankly, it was not going to be worth it to undo and then redo all that work. So unfortunately, we had to eat that. So Inside of our industry, pictures, 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 and more pictures. As I tell all the subcontractors we hire, I would rather have 1,000 photographs that are organized and make sense that I have to go through to get what I want than get 999 photos and I need that one to get you paid. And that's what it is. And people don't understand that. When you go into a house and you are doing your thing, you need to tell the story. Tell the story. Have all the elements of the information to explain there's a roof leak. Look, here's the damage on the roof. Look, here's damage here. Look, here's damage here. Look, here's damage here. Why is that important? The dreaded back charge, which we'll get into later also. You need to report to the bank all the damages and also everything you did to that property and the jobs you performed through our photographs, before, during, and afters, and bid photographs. And PPW and Proven are those softwares that you work with in the field through a mobile app, and that app then transmits it back up. It stores your photographs for you, so that way, in case there's ever a dispute 6-7 months later, your photographs are still there that prove you correct. That is very, very, very important because that does happen a lot. You could be paid for a job and then 6 months later they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to back charge you because of X, Y, and Z. You were able to pull those photographs back up and then be able to prove that everything was done properly and done correct and avoid situations and circumstances. And again, the only way to do that is photographs, 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 and more photographs every time you go there. Most properties, like a grass cut, we normally take about 50 to 75 photographs per grass cut. On a standard inspection of a house, 500, 600 photographs. You can never have too many. And PPW and Proven are one of those things that help you organize your work orders, get your work orders, do some invoicing, and also get your bids together, get all of the information in one spot, and it's important. And also, this industry has mandates and set forth things. And that's where we're going to get into just in a second. These softwares kind of work themselves in. We, at my company, we have only used PPW. We've been using PPW since 2015. Yes, 2015, if I remember right. So we've been a long-time client of them, and, you know, it is a web-based software, and they do have an app that you download onto your phone. It is nice because it is web-based. There's not a specific software that you need to install onto your computer. You can go to any computer, tablet, log in, and see your whole portfolio of workload. So that's very important. Certain softwares require, if you're installed on one computer, that's the only computer it works on. Some of them are a little worse than others. So, but you pull your hair out with all of them. It's software, so they all have technical difficulties, and when they shut down or when they have drama, boy, it messes with your world. So, yeah. But Mary uses Proven. So, how do you like Proven, Mary?
I have experience with both. I've used PPW and Proven on the computer. I don't have much experience with PPW, the app. I have used Proven, the app. When the Proven app isn't horrible, it's laid out on the app on the phone, kind of like PPW. But if we want to talk about the actual computer-based, PPW is definitely the way to go. PPW is much cleaner, much more organized. I have found that Proven is a little more chaotic and all the information is kind of scattered. So when a work order comes into PPW, you look at the work order and it has all of your line items on it. Okay, you need to go do this, 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 and this. Now, when you are on Proven online, it comes in each and everything that you do comes in its own line item. So for one work order where you have 5 different items to do, you will have 5 different lines on your main screen. As to where on PPW, it just shows all of your work orders. You click it and then it takes you into your work order and tells you what you need to do. In Proven online, you have to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I much prefer, in the time that I've used both, I much prefer PPW. It is much more streamlined, organized, and it looks much nicer. It's more user friendly, much more user friendly. When I first started using Proven, I had a lot of issues. I was on the phone almost every day. I have this issue. What do I do? How do I fix this? And a lot of it was on the back end on their side. You have to check in to all of your work orders. When you go to a property, you have to use your ABC number and you have to check into your work orders. When you submit that work order, that check-in and your Aspen Grove ID gets sent over to the client. So that way they can tell who was there, when you were there. Proven wasn't doing that. There was some kind of disconnect and it was on the back end. But the thing is if you don't sign in with your ABC number, you will get a fine. And each time that it doesn't happen, your fine gets bigger and bigger. So I much prefer, in my professional opinion, PPW. It's much, much more organized and much more user friendly.
That's one thing too. As you are building, as you are getting your company set up and organized, both PPW and Proven have a free trial, so you can sign up with them before you pay anything. They'll give you walk you through stuff. They'll give you the full sales pitch, and they will give you, I forget how many days, but they'll give you several days to get in there and play with it and figure out what works best for you. So that's critical to you finding out what works great for you and what you need. Again, we use PPW. I've used a couple more. A couple more went out of business too. But PPW has always been, in my opinion, too, one of the better ones that I've used for their versatility. And again, even though we all hate the problems, I will admit technical support gets back with you fairly quickly. Because again, they do realize this is your platform for work. And again, if it's not working right, it's costing you money and giving them a bad name. And that's critical. Mary talked about your Aspen ID or ABC number. Let's dive into that for a little bit, because again, this is another business requirement.
Yes.
Because we are dealing with banks, we are dealing with liability issues of personal property, theft. We are dealing with craftsmanship. We are dealing with federal contracts, the FHA, VA, HUD, and all the other acronyms. Aspen ID. Aspen ID was something that was formed several years ago. This is a requirement for all national companies. So whether you're working for a regional company or you're working for a national company, the Aspen ID check-in is required. Aspen ID is basically a background check associated with a number. So you will go through and you will fill out a very lengthy application. And do you know how much the application is, how much the fee is for them, Mary?
I do believe right now, I believe last time we did it, it was right around $60.
Okay, roughly. So check them out. Yeah. And so basically what that does, that happens every year. And that's only one. Certain companies require another layer of background checks depending on their clientele. Mm-hmm. So, excuse me. So Aspen ID, Aspen Grove, your ABC number, they give your background check. They do their thing. We had a few hiccups with ours because it is a national thing. They go through all the databases to make sure who you are and who they're letting into those properties. And that's very critical. And one thing, remember, if you have employees, your employees must also have it. This is not something where you may have one number and then you ship it out to 10 people plus your subcontractors and everything else. And next thing you know, you're going to get in trouble and you can lose your contracts because you have a multiple login violation. So always remember that. But basically, Aspen ID or the background checks, they have 4 different levels of degrees. Some you're perfectly fine, everything's clean. Some are questionable. Some are and then the others are no. You're not allowed in. So another big thing when you're starting your company is before you start investing and going into mortgage your house and getting a bank loan so that way you can get a new truck, a new this, all your tools and everything else, get your Aspen ID figured out if anything's in question. Any illegal activity that you might have in your past, no judgment here, but you want to make sure that you're able to go into these properties and do the work. You might have something on your background, something on your record from your past, a mistake that you made. You go and spend $50,000 on all these tools and equipment and everything else, and then you decide to get your ABC number. Well, then they find out that problem in your past prevents you from working in your future. And unfortunately, you cannot work for national clients or regional clients with the ICO4 rating. They're just not going to let you in there. They're not going to give you a rating. And if you do go in, clock in underneath that ABC number, your client's going to figure it out because, again, as Mary said, the software shipped that up to the clients. And we have had an issue before in the past where we had a new employee. The background check didn't quite come back as fast. We didn't pay enough attention to it. And 2 months later, we got the client being like, hey, why are you sending this person in? He has, the ICO4 rating, and he's not allowed in. So unfortunately, we had to terminate the gentleman because we can't have them go to their properties because I'm not going to lose my contracts. So, Mary, why don't you have a little bit more versatility and knowledge in this one. So why don't you go ahead and take and explain a little bit more about Aspen ID.
Yes, so there are 4 different levels. So after you get your background check and they go through everything, one of the biggest ones, well, Aspen currently, it does change from time to time. Right now is Shield Hub, and you can find this on their website. But it has different IC number levels. It is ICO1, ICO2, ICO3, and ICO4. Most of these companies want you to be at ICO1. ICO1 means you have no background, no nothing. You've never done anything. You're completely clean. But then IC1 also goes into, okay, you may have made a mistake here or there. This includes like small traffic violations. You went a little too fast. You got a speeding ticket. Alcohol, marijuana, and minor misdemeanors like that will still leave you at ICO1. This is what most clients prefer. This is what some clients, this is actually a requirement that you have to be ICO1. There are a lot of clients who accept ICO2. ICO2 means you have a DUI, you have some kind of charge for controlled substances, small theft, which is, I believe, under $500 is what it is for that one. Because you go into a lot of properties, there's a lot of items on these properties. They don't want you going in and stealing things. They don't want to deal with thieves, which I completely understand. And then your next one is ICO3. This is where you get into burglary and property crimes, narcotics. And then ICO4 is violence, fraud, sex crimes. If you have an ICO4, you will not be allowed on these properties. So that is why it is very important to, in the beginning, get your background check, get your ABC number, get your IC number. If you have anything, like Brian said, if you have anything that you're on the fence about, you don't know what it might be, make sure you take care of this first before you dive too deep into this, because if you have an ICO3 and ICO4, 98% of these companies will not allow you on their properties.
Now, why is that? Let's talk about that for a minute. Why is it a big deal? I'm just there to do a cleaning of a refrigerator. Why does that matter that, I'm here? Why? One of those key things is that, as you talked about, it's personal property and theft and vandalism. We all make mistakes in life, for sure. And unfortunately, if the mistake is too bad in our society, they figure you're branded for that for the rest of your life. So if you have a burglary charge, and next thing you know, you're going into properties, you're going into a $5 million house that's going through a divorce, and there's, a $10,000 this and a $5,000 that. And I've seen it houses. I've seen houses where, people have passed away, and then next thing you know, all the personal belongings are there. The jewelry's there, this and that. They send technicians in that are questionable. These technicians remove items from the property, and then the bank gets sued. There was one big lawsuit several years ago, which we'll get into also a little bit of this one. The national client sent a local contractor out to the house. He went to 555 Main Street in Main Streetville, USA. So when he went to the house, he looked at the house. It looked kind of like no one lived there. The power was still on, but there was you could tell there was no activity in the house. There was no activity around the property. So it was kind of a lake house. There was not a lot of neighbors around. So he just kind of winged it and said, "Hey, I'm going in." Broke the window, went into the house. And this was one of those orders that was clear the house, get everything done. The bank owns it. Remove everything and go, go, go. So he did the lock changes, did the winterization, and started the removal of items in the house. 3 days later, with his last trailer load, car pulls in, Mercedes. Woman jumps out screaming and hollering, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing at my house? Who are you?" "Well, ma'am, I work for the bank, and, here's the client, here's this. Is this your home?" She's like, "Yes, this is my house." It's like, "Well, ma'am, the bank got your property back. They bought it back at a sheriff's sale, I'm assuming, and they sent me this order to clear it out and do everything." She's like, "What are you talking about? There is no mortgage on this house. I've owned this house. My parents bought this house and gave me this house. What are you talking about mortgage?" Well, come to find out that there was a computer glitch, and the computer system, instead of, it was, the work order said 555 Main Street, and next thing you know, it was 444 Main Street was the actual house. So this guy literally went to the house, broke in, removed everything, and what happened was the lady sued the bank. $4 million is what she got. Think about that for a minute. But then you also go into those situations of circumstances, like I say, where people pass away and there's all this personal belongings of high value. And now, mom and dad pass away. Next thing you know, of course, we've been through these situations, and, you're not thinking clearly as the executor of the state, of the child, dealing with this grief and this mess. And then all of a sudden the bank sent people in, and now grandma's jewelry is missing and stolen. So the people deal with that by suing the company that they sent people in. So that's why it's important too that, you got to realize when you go into these properties, this stuff does not belong to you. The banks want to know who they're sending in. What is your background? What kind of person are you? And again, we all make mistakes in life. We pay for those mistakes in life, but sometimes banks don't want to deal with those situations. So again, as Mary said, get your Aspen ID, get your ABC number first before you start getting into things if there is anything questionable. We also recommend too that you do this just because you never know. I had one lady, she signed up. Next thing you know, she had a felony on her record. She's like, "I've never even been in this state. What are you talking about?" Well, come to find out that when they were entering in information, I'm assuming her identity was close to another person in that state. Maybe so. I don't know the whole circumstance. But this lady had something on her record because somebody mistakenly entered it onto the database at the police. They entered her information into the database, And next thing you know, she's tagged. So she had a big old mess trying to get that cleared up. So she actually found out that she had a problem without even knowing she had a problem. So, it's always a good thing. One thing Mary mentioned about was Shield Hub. I wanted to touch base with that because that's ABC, Aspen Grove, uses different companies to do the background search, and it is a national search. So that's what that is. And they had Clear Star prior to that. So again, they're just changing around information and the who, what, when, and where. But again, this is why it's in place. And also, as Mary said, when you do clock in, your phone is geotagged. Your phone has GPS on it. So they know when you took the pictures, they know who was at the property, they know where the picture was taken, and it also verifies, because now with AI and all this other good stuff coming down the line, it is very easy to do fraudulent activities with photographs to steal from the banks that are sending you this work. So they're cracking down on that too. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, so that is one of, again, the biggest requirements. So once you have your business licensing, your insurance set up, you got your tools, you got your ABC number, you got your software base, because that's another big thing too, as small business owners, you don't track your receipts enough. Go get a accounting software. Your accountant will love you for it. Your mileage, your receipts, your business expenses, these are things that you need to utilize. And again, talk to your tax guy, talk to your CPA, talk to an attorney. Make sure you have everything set up properly for your local laws, your state laws, and federal laws, because you just want to make some money. But if you don't have it set up right, it'll come back to haunt you bad. Federal government, state government, love tax liens, love to take people's money. You gotta love it. So, but those are the primary things you need to do. Those are the primary things you need to get situated and set up. But let's talk about some, now you have everything good. Now you've got your truck is ready to go in your driveway. How do I get the work? And who do I get it from? So, one of these things, as starting out fresh as a single person company, to receive a national client is going to be very difficult for you. Yes. And what I mean by that is they don't want to talk to a single person. They want to deal with a coverage area, because you're going to be worth their time. If you have several employees, you have several subcontractors, you're moving. Most of the times you're going to deal with regional companies. That's the biggest thing. So, Mary, I'm going to hand this off to you for a hot second. Unfortunately, I have a little bit of a technical difficulty, so I'm going to get that fixed. And Mary, I'll let you guide the group through our regional companies, the do's and do nots, and I will be right back.
Okay, so we have national companies and regional companies. National companies are the lenders that work directly with the banks. Under your national companies, you have regionals. There are some really great regionals out there. There are also some not so great regionals out there. The longer that you are in the business, you will see that more and more of the nationals that are coming in are from overseas. And then they are coming in and they are looking for Bob the contractor down the street, Jenny the contractor in the next town over. The thing about these regional companies, though, is they are bidding very low. The money that is coming into them and what they are paying out is a lot less than what it should be. And it is causing a lot of issues in the industry. The nationals there's HUD requirements on standard pricing. And these regional companies, they don't want to stick with that. They are trying to have too many hands in the pot, and they are trying to take more money than they should be. They are not the boots on the ground. They are not the ones out doing the actual work. So when you look for a regional company, I highly, highly, highly suggest that you look for someone who is American based. Have a conversation with these companies. Make sure you are talking to them, because a lot of these overseas companies will quote unquote say they're American based, and they might have a little tiny 1-bedroom apartment in New Jersey and they're using that as their home base. But you want to talk to these people. You want to get their price sheets. You want to see what their payment terms are. You want to read through their contracts, their onboarding contracts. But I highly, highly, highly recommend that you actually talk to someone, not through email, on the phone. Pick up the phone, talk to someone, find out how long these people have been in the business, find out where they are based out of. And I highly recommend going with American based, not offshores.
So this is very important. What you just said there. I just want to hear it real quick because this is important. Why do you not go with an offshore regional? How are you going to get paid?
See, that's another thing. The offshore, like I was just talking about a little while ago, these offshore regionals, they will put bids in and bid approvals come back, but the price that they are wanting to pay these contractors that are actually boots on the ground is little to nothing. They are trying to rip people off. They are trying to scam people, and they are trying to keep entirely too much of the money for themselves, rather than paying for the work that was completed. And then another big issue that we have seen quite a few times, more than I care to admit, but they will have you go out and they will have you do these jobs, and then you don't hear from them. You don't get your money. You try to talk to someone, you try to figure out where your payment is, and they either ignore you or they blow you off. And that's when the issues start.
And that's where, again, you need to protect yourself with a solid base. Again, having the proper things in place so that way, you know, when you sign a contract with these people, they're going to give you the payment terms, and that's very important. But again, it's all words on paper. They will make you sign a no lien clause because that is industry standard. The main reason is that too many people don't know how to do our business and don't know how to do things. So if the national client can't get paid because you didn't take the proper photographs, even though you did the work right, you didn't take the proper photographs, it didn't happen. Remember, if there's no photographs, it didn't happen. Plain and simple, 150%. If you don't have pictures, it never took place.
Yep.
So when a national company can't get paid, even though you did it right, now they've got to go through the lien clause or the lien, because you're going to put a lien on the property saying, well, you know, I did this beautiful work, but also I didn't do it to the company standards, the industry standards, by the photographs. So I'm going to put a lien on it. And again, you know, the bank's got to deal with that mess too. But ultimately, like with a lot of national companies, they don't care. They just want to pay you and move on. I mean, like I say, it's not that big of a deal. Regional companies that are offshore, they just close the company down because there's not a brick and mortar building. There's not $100,000 worth of equipment and employees, and there's not a business structure. It's literally a call center. It's a call center offshore, and they start an American-based company with an American person. They get the contracts from the national clients. They rip a bunch of people off, and then they leave. In my experience in the industry, I mean, I've lost $27,000 with one regional. You know what I mean? That hurts your pocket.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. That's what I've lost because they didn't pay certain jobs, or they said this, they said that. And it just got to the point to where I just stopped working for them because, again, I saw that it's a mess. Now, with that also being said, we have many national clients. Top echelons, real estate agents, direct line banks. We have the largest companies in the industry sending us work. But I also have regionals. Why? It doesn't make any sense. I have an American-based regional that we have worked with for over 10 years, and I would never get rid of that man. And he'll be on the show eventually, I swear. But again, there's insight. There is, okay, gee, I'm not making $20 extra on this job, but I'm building a relationship which exposes me to more properties. So where I might go to a national client and get paid $100 for this work, he's going to pay me $75, but he just got me a $25,000 job that I would have never gotten because I don't work for that national.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? You know what I mean? I'll take making money over not making money any day of the week. So again, finding the proper people to work with. And also remember, you are extending these people credit. That's the biggest thing. When I go do a job for a regional company and they say, we're going to pay you in 3 weeks, cool. I'm going to go put out $500 in labor and fuel and materials. I'm going to go put out my money to get that job done, hopefully thinking these people are going to pay me. So I'm extending this company credit. So again, how am I ensured that these people are going to pay? That's your number one question to ask offshore regionals. And you can tell by the accent. How am I getting paid? What's my guarantee of payment? You know, and also a lot of these regionals, you know, they're one-stop shops, sure, but after you do one job for them, and then next thing you know, as Mary said, they blow you off, they forget you exist, then what was the point of wasting all the time to sign up? So is your regional actually supplying work, or are they just running you around to write bids because the national company doesn't want to touch them? So that's another thing. Mary said very clear, talk to them. Do you trust them? Are you willing to, you know, go into your bank account and give this company $10,000? Think about it. What assets do they have? How are you going to retrieve your money? And again, this is a whole other topic of a show which we're kind of leading up for. But working with those regionals, working with those nationals, how do you get in? How do you get your place in line? How do you start making big money? Because remember, here's the key thing in this industry. If people keep doing it cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, the nationals are going to continue to reduce their price. This industry has not seen a price increase for 10 years.
Nope.
Then how do you make money in this age with inflation and everything else? Trust me, we make money. We make money.
You got to get out there and hustle.
You got to go out there and hustle. You got to get out there and move. You got to get out there and get it done. You know what I mean? And if you're worried about pennies, you're missing the dollars. If you are complaining about you are going somewhere to write a bid and it's an hour's drive away, don't go into the industry. Don't. You will put the miles in that truck. You will. I think we spend about $40,000 a year in fuel. You know, just in gas. You know what I mean? It's an absurd.
It's that.
It's an absurd number.
I'm almost positive it's more than that.
Yes, but at the end of the day, you need to be out there in front of your clientele, in front of your customer, and they will send you more work than you ever can believe. Remember, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
That's never going away.
It might have a few hiccups every now and again.
But it's not going away.
we call that the preservation crash of 2026. That's what I'm calling it now. Which we've addressed in previous shows, and we'll touch back with. But again, the industry's always survived, and the industry is always busy. Right now, the industry is going back to pre-COVID, you know, and trust me, it's busy. It's busy. So, but like I say, we covered a lot in getting your business started. Make sure if you are interested, reach out to us. I am not a licensed lawyer. I am not a licensed CPA, but we can give you advice. We can tell you where to look. We've been there. We've done that. I may not know the local laws that you pertain to, but we can consult and give you a good general direction. At the end of the day, this industry needs a breath of fresh air. This industry needs those great contractors out there, those great people out there that want to make an impact not only in their pockets, but also make an impact to the community. We have all driven by that house with the 3-foot tall grass, the broken windows. You know, we've all driven by those houses in the neighborhoods. This industry is the ones that clean that up. I always say this to every one of my employees and every contractor. I don't work for a national. I don't work for a regional. I don't work for an MCS, a Safeguard, a Service Link, a Cyprex, a Wolverine, Black Dome, Miles, and a Partridge in a Pear Tree, if I missed any. I work for Neighbors. What do you mean? That poor guy who bought his house for $485,000, and he saved all of his life to buy him his or hers buy their dream home. Next door, across the street, somebody passes away, and next thing you know, that property goes into a disarray situation, a distressed situation. That person has to wake up every day, walk out their front door, and see that 3-foot tall grass, that snake and rat that's running around the property, that's eating his garbage, the raccoon, the possum, the cat, the dog, whatever. That guy has to look at it. That person has to look at it. That's the person I'm working for. We just get paid by the bank. We get paid by the real estate agent. We get paid by the large national company. But I work for the guy that just saved his entire life to buy his dream home, and he's got to look at that mess for the next 4 years. That's the people we work for. So always remember that. This is a beautiful industry. The only advertising I think we've ever done is for employees and subcontractors. We have never, except for the crash of 26, which again was the government's fault, we never not had work. Even during that time, we had work. We just had less.
It was just slow, but
Yeah.
we had work.
Oh, yeah. And again, that was it was kind of a breath of fresh air to get a break, but then also it was like, ugh. And COVID.
Not used to it.
Yeah, you had two natural disasters which slowed the industry down. Other than that, it doesn't stop. You want to work 7 days a week, it can push you. You want to expand your business to multiple states, it'll do. You want to make $100 million, you can. And I'm not kidding, you can. I know a company, actually, it's very funny because the company that PPW was actually started by a preservation contractor in Ohio, Matt. Talked to Matt several times back, 10 years ago. But he was a contractor. That's all he was, but he wanted a better system. He came up with the software, and now he's retired. But again, he was doing $20 million a year out of Ohio. He started out with his truck, trailer, and himself and his wife.
That's where it all starts.
The point is, if you do the job right, you're smart about it, you get it moving, you make it happen, the growth is endless because there's always foreclosures. Remember the 4 Ds: death, disease, divorce, disaster. These are the 4 things that drive this industry, period. Death, disease, divorce, disaster. And it's horrible to think about because I always tell people too, it's like I'm the morticianer of the housing industry. Nobody likes me, but man, when that grass is 3 foot tall and it's a rat infested house that stinks and smells of rotten food, they love me.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're able to take these properties and make them good. So, again, so many more things to do, so many more shows to go through. This is just the basics of getting yourself started. Walking away from this podcast, we say this: make sure you've got your foundation set right. Again, reach out to us. We have many, many, many points of communications. Reach out to us if you have any questions or comments. We'd be more than happy to take time to answer those and help steer you in the right direction or answer any questions you might have.
Let me break in there. That's a good thing. Wow, that was a lot of information, but I think that wraps up today's show. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. Be sure to follow us at Property Prez Insiders on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You can also visit our website at propertyprezinsiders.com. And we're trying to build a community to discuss all aspects of the property preservation business. So join our Facebook group and be part of our discussion. And until next week, we'll be right here, and we'll see you then.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow us and share it with your friends. Got questions? Go to our website, propertypresinsiders.com, and join our Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you.